You are listening to the Navigating Adult ADHD podcast, where it's all about education, support, and coaching for adults with ADHD. I'm your host, Zena, a late diagnosed ADHDer, here to help you unpack the challenges, frustrations, and the positive side of living with ADHD. With my no BS approach, I'll help you to better understand your unique ADHD brain and how you can work with it to feel better, increase your self-confidence, improve your relationships, and ultimately achieve your goals. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Navigating Adult ADHD podcast. I just wanted to say, if you attended the New Zealand ADHD conference up in Auckland and I got to meet you, thank you for coming up and saying hi. I love meeting you guys in person. I really do. It just gives me so much dopamine. It is so joyful. And if you are going to attend the Christchurch one, which is November, I want to say 9th, I think, please come and say hi because, as I said, it gives me so much dopamine. It is so pleasurable and I love meeting you guys. So just wanted to put that in there because I forgot to say that last time when I mentioned the conference. But today we are talking about something I find so fascinating, and I'm so happy that we're finally here talking about it. And that is why we have difficulties with self-regulation. We're going to talk about something called interoception in just a moment. Before we do, though, I want to ask you a couple of questions. Do you struggle to remember to drink water until maybe you feel like you're on the Sahara Desert and haven't drunk for days? Or maybe you forget to eat because you miss the, kind of hunger cues until you're like starving or it's mid-afternoon. Do you wait till you're absolutely busting before you go pee? I know I do. And do you miss the cues that say you're angry until you're like yelling or slamming doors or like just shutting down completely? This, my friends, is where interoception comes in. I always get this word wrong. I'm pretty sure it's interoception. Jeez, maybe I should have Googled that before the podcast, but never mind. Look, it's in the title. However you want to pronounce it, roll with it. Interoception. Okay, we're going with it. This, my friends, is something that we as people with ADHD, we have difficulty with this, okay? So I'm going to demonstrate this by telling you a little story. A while back now, I was on a 3-hour road trip and I was by myself driving home from somewhere I had been. And I was in this windy gorge and I'm driving my car and I all of a sudden notice that steam is coming out of the bonnet. And I look down and I see that my car's temperature gauge is like through the roof. It's like redlining, like, oh shit, like my car is heating up. And as soon as it was safe to do so, I pulled over and I popped the hood of my car. And my car was overheating. Now, like most cars, mine has a sensor that measured its temperature, but as the driver, I was not paying attention to that signal until there was literally steam coming out of the hood. I did not realize it was heating up. And until it was kind of almost too late, right? There's steam everywhere. So this is what interoception is like for people with ADHD, okay? We may not notice the grumbling in our stomach or that hollow feeling that would indicate to somebody that you're hungry. And maybe we miss that signal until it's mid-afternoon and we can't function because we're so hungry and our brain's got no fuel, right? Or perhaps we don't realize that we are, mildly annoyed, we're getting annoyed until we boil over into like anger and pissed off and we find ourselves like yelling at our partner, okay? Sometimes we miss the senses and the signals until we're in the red zone. So, what is interoception? Effectively, it is how we feel our internal experiences, okay? It's how we interpret our body's signals and sensations, but we have to be able to feel them to know that they're there. So it's things like the urge to pee, right? The feeling of fullness after or during a meal that tells you you're satisfied, you're full. It could be knowing that you're thirsty, right? It's also feeling tension or pain in your body. It's like your emotional state, being able to label your emotions and identify them. So interoception is how you perceive what's going on inside your body. Now, this is pretty important because the system helps your body and you to get what you need. Now, understanding these body signals that we have really is the foundation of self-care and self-advocacy, right? Our body signals help us to interpret what's happening in our body and to identify what it is that we need in any given moment. Now, when we struggle with this, when we struggle with having the awareness of what's happening in our body, right, our true source of discomfort can't always be pinpointed. And that means that we can't, take action to address it and help our bodies to regulate. Okay? So I think a traffic light system is actually quite a good way to think about this because our bodies want to remain in homeostasis, right? Let's call that the green zone, right? This is the state where our bodies perform at their best and they feel at their best, right? They're fed, they're watered, all of their needs are taken care of, right? That's the green zone. Now, the orange zone, on the other hand, is when we get signals from our interoception system, right, that says, hey, you're starting to get hungry, right? That kind of whisper of hunger in your tummy, or, hey, we haven't had any water for a while. I'm starting to get thirsty. I'm feeling a little bit dry, right? Like those are the orange zone, those little signals. Hey, I'm stressed today. I'm feeling kind of tense, right? Like those, we start to maybe feel like, that dryness in your throat, or you feel that tenseness in your shoulders, right? Or that kind of heat in your cheeks and that buzzing sensation in your tummy that says, hey, I'm anxious, right? All of those little senses, those little things that we notice, right? That's our interoception system saying, hey, this is happening. We're in the orange. Just so you know, there's an orange light over here, right? Then there's the red zone. And that's when the alarm is on like full blast, the lights are flashing, right? And things are at the extreme end. Now that's often when we notice, okay? We're forced to stop and do something about it, right? That's normally when we will take action to rectify the issue, right? And then we'll try and help our bodies to get back to the green zone, okay? So that's the traffic light system. Now, interoception provides information to us that helps us to act in a way that creates stability and balance in our bodies, in our lives, right? So being aware of our body's signals and our senses is actually a huge part of self-regulating and self-soothing. So for a neurotypical person, okay, they might feel that their breathing's increasing, or their face is getting hot, and then they're going to hear some thoughts in their head that are kind of starting to turn into an argument. And they'll realize, hey, I'm actually starting to feel frustrated because I can't find this car park. And when they notice those signals, they might say, talk themselves down, take a few deep breaths and decide, you know what, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal, okay? Whereas we, on the other hand, in that same situation, when we can't find a park, we might get really worked up into a state about not being able to find a park and then walk into our appointment feeling super annoyed and like really flustered and really angry. Okay? If we struggle to know what our body needs from moment to moment, it can be hard to care for ourselves and to comfort ourselves. Okay? It can also be very hard to regulate our emotions and self-soothe when we don't get those signals, right? And we just end up all of a sudden in the red. So interoception actually plays a very significant role in emotional regulation, okay? So emotional regulation is something that we know many people with ADHD struggle with, and that is the ability to feel and process our emotions. We have high highs, we have low lows, and often we can be quite reactive. We're also very prone to frustration and irritation, but we can be very reactive, or we might just completely shut down. And that often happens because we don't get the orange light. We miss those cues and signals, and we end up at one extreme end. Okay. So if you don't know that you're feeling a bit of stress or you're feeling a bit of anger, until you're like yelling, crying, or punching something, then it's not as easy to control that emotion. It's hard to try and soothe or control your anger if you don't actually know you're angry until you've hit something. Okay? Emotions become more challenging to downregulate or like de-escalate the hotter they get, right? The higher they get. So for example, if your stress level's a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10, right? If your stress level's a 6, it's much easier to take a walk, to do some breath work, maybe some tapping, right? To reframe your stressful thoughts and work through what's going on. It's much easier at a 6 out of 10 to be able to take action to reduce your stress, right? But when your stress gets to a 9 or a 10 out of 10, it is much harder to bring it back down. So I also want to say, if you have not responded to typical forms of mindfulness or suggested tools for managing your emotions, it may be because of this, because of interoception challenges that you have, okay? I quite often will hear from clients who have had either counseling or therapy in the past, and they say that the tools that they were given for managing their emotions weren't very helpful. And in all cases that I have come across, interoception is the reason why. Because they have struggled to interpret what's happening in their bodies, to notice the signals until it's, full on intense 10 out of 10. Okay. So by the time they go to use one of these tools, they're like, well, it's too late and it's not helping. Okay. Because ideally these tools are designed to be used a little bit earlier. Like the example I gave you before, when your stress is at a 6 out of 10, much easier to use some of those tools. When you're at that 10 out of 10, it's a different category, right? So one thing I find really fascinating, and let's be honest, I totally geek out on this stuff, like I love this shit, is how we take on more information through our senses, okay? So people with ADHD, all right, we take on more information through our 5 senses from the world around us, right? We take on more than our neurotypical friends, more information through touch, smell, taste, through visual, and through sound, okay? And that means our brain has got more it needs to process behind the scenes. It also speaks to why we are very intuitive or kind of perceptive in a lot of situations, right? But our sensory system doesn't end there. What? We don't just have 5 senses, my friend. We've got 8. Wild, right? So we actually we've got, say, those 5, let's think of them as external senses, right? Because they're taking in information from our external world, right? The ones that we know of. And then we've got 3 internal senses, 3 that are happening inside our body. Isn't this so cool? Oh my gosh, I'm just so excited. And us ADHDers, we have difficulty with interpreting the internal senses, right? We've got a huge focus on the external, and we're often very externally focused, and we're very aware externally, but not so much internally. Isn't that fascinating? So our 3 internal or hidden senses are, number 1 is the vestibular. So this is like you've got little receptors in your ear, right, in your inner ear. And basically what that does is it helps with balance and also supports movement, okay? So for anyone who gets vertigo, that is because there's something wrong with the sense in your ear, okay? Then we've got proprioception. I know that's a mouthful, right? So that, again, is a body awareness and coordination sense. So if you, like many ADHDers, find yourself clumsy and walking into things or tripping over often, that is in relation to this sense. And yes, that is actually very common in our community. Okay, so this sense helps to create like smooth movement and to make sure that you don't trip over the footpath when you go to walk up onto it, or, you don't, walk into the tree. Instead, you walk around it, right? It's why I also walk into the corner of the bed all the time and end up with bruises. And then, so that's 2 out of the 3 of our internal senses. The third one is today's topic. The third one is interoception. So This is the signals that provide information on our internal body and emotional states. Things like the urge to pee or being hungry, right? Our temperature, are we hot or cold? Are we in pain, right? What are we feeling? Are we happy? Are we sad? Are we anxious? That is interoception. Okay. Now, my friends, there is good news here, okay? Because we can increase our interoception awareness. Okay, we can actually improve it and increase it. Isn't that fantastic? So here's how I like to think of this, okay? Where a neurotypical person does this automatically, right? Just like they're driving an automatic car, we simply need to do it manually. That's it, all right? They're driving an automatic, we're driving a manual. That's the difference here. So the research shows that we can build better interoceptive awareness. So at the most basic level, we do this by practicing identifying body signals and labeling them, okay? So I have 2 ways that I like to do this, and I'm going to run through those in just a moment. But before I do, just like learning to drive a manual car, right? I still remember I was 13. I was a little bit young. Mind you, back then you could get your license at 15. No, wait, was I 12? I don't know. I just know I was so young when I started learning to drive. But my dad took me to this giant empty parking lot, and we had this really old red Honda Accord, I think it was. Man, could I make that thing bunny hop. But he taught me to drive in a manual car, and it definitely took quite a lot of practice and repetition before I stopped bunny hopping. Yes, it did. All right. The point of my story is just like learning to drive a manual car, right? Learning to be aware of our body's internal signals and our interoception, it just takes practice and repetition. That's it. Okay. So here is the first way that I like to do this. And that is with a 1-minute body scan. Just 1 minute scanning your body head to toe. Okay. So this is all about listening to your body and taking notice of what it's telling you. Now, we do this by drawing focus to each body part, starting with your head and then working your way down, right? You're scanning, like if you imagine like a scanner scanning over you, like you're scanning through your body to see how things feel. Do you have a headache? Do you have a dry mouth? Do you have a tight jaw? Do you have sore shoulders from holding them up tensely? Are your arms relaxed? How does your stomach feel? Right? And then you work your way down your body. And when you get to the end, you ask yourself, like, what does my body need? And the answer might be, I need some rest, or I need some hydration, or actually I need some food. Right? So we want to listen to that, and then we want to act on it. Okay? So doing this, and I'm going to take you through it, like I'm going to do a minute of it in just a second for you, but I just want to explain it a little bit more in detail first. Doing the body scan does 3 really important things. Okay? Number 1, it helps you to get used to noticing your body sensations. Number 2, it helps you practice checking in with your needs and then fulfilling them, right? And number 3 is it's a really simple way to bring your attention to the here and now, and that can help with reducing feelings of anxiety and help to calm your body and mind, all right? Effectively, this is a huge element in learning how to self-regulate, and ADHD is effectively a disorder of self-regulation, right? We struggle to be able to self-regulate, so we need to do some of these things manually. That's what we're learning to do here, okay? So I want you, and I appreciate if you're driving, don't go shutting your eyes or anything, but if you're walking, you can definitely do this, right? Even if you are in the car, you can still do this, but just be mindful of being safe, okay? No crashing, none of that shit. Don't go shutting your eyes or anything, okay? So I want you to, first of all, and if you are in a place where you can shut your eyes, fantastic, right? Because it helps. And here's why shutting your eyes is important, right? Is because it eliminates another one of your senses for you to be distracted by. right? So if you have got your eyes open and you can see stuff around you, you're more likely to get distracted by, the bird that just flew past my window or the truck that just drove past on the road, right? So if we can eliminate more of our senses, right, even if we've got headphones in or whatever, the more of our other senses we can eliminate, the more focus we can put on going internal to listen. All right, that being said, let's go. So if you're in a position where you can close your eyes, fantastic. And I want you to draw your attention to your head. How does your head feel? Does it feel, is there a headache? Is there any sensation? What do you notice? How does your mouth feel? Is your mouth dry? Is it tingly? What about your jaw? Is your jaw tight? Or does it feel okay? Coming down to your neck and to your shoulders, how do they feel? Do you have sore or tight shoulders? Are you holding them up tensely by your ears? What about your arms? Start with your left arm. Does it feel relaxed? Does it feel tense? Is there any pain? Now your right. How does your right arm feel? Is it relaxed? Maybe there's tension. What about pain? Heading down into your chest. How does your chest feel? What do you notice inside? What about your stomach? Can you feel anything? What would you describe? Heading down, what about your butt? Maybe you're sitting down. Maybe it's time to stand up because your butt's sore. What can you feel? Through your hips, your lower back? What about your leg? Starting with your left one. What do you feel in your left leg? Your knee, your calf, all the way down. Into your left foot. What do you feel in your foot? What about your right leg? Starting at the top, scanning down. Through your knee, down through your calf, down to your ankle, and into your foot. What do you feel? Now that you've worked your way down your body, I want you to think, what does my body need? What did I hear? What did I notice? Is it rest? Is it hydration? Is it food? When I was doing that with you, I noticed that my stomach's a little bit sore, a little bit sore. I actually ate something a couple of days ago that did not agree with me, and I'm wondering if that could still be lingering. But I'll tell you what, I did not notice until we did that exercise. I've just been brushing over it, but it's definitely there and it's noticeable. But until I shut my eyes as I kind of walked through that with you, and I really went in to walk you through it, I didn't notice that. Okay, that is interoception. All right, so that is a demonstration of the 1 minute body scan. Now, the second thing that I recommend we do, right, this is what I do, is naming our emotions and identifying the sensations that come with them. So I will often send my clients a feelings wheel, which you can quite literally Google and you can just download or screenshot it, okay? And then I'll have them play a game. And I have this week-long game, and the game is how many different feelings can you catch in a week, right? So ideally, what we're trying to do is label lots of different emotions, because sometimes we have a very limited vocabulary with our emotions. It's I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm pissed off, or I'm anxious. That's it, right? When in actual fact, the more we can correctly and accurately distinguish them and tell them apart, the more we can support ourselves with regulating and processing emotions, okay? There's a whole bunch of science behind it. I've talked about it in other episodes. We don't got to get into it today. So sometimes what I will have my client do is I'll have them set a timer for once or twice a day to remember to check in and ask themselves, how am I feeling? Right? Because we can just brush past it and go, yeah, I'm okay, I'm fine. I'm anxious, or I'm stressed, or I'm whatever. We just brush over it. We don't actually pause to really think about the answer to that question. So if they do set this timer and they do, look at what is it I'm feeling, it does require them to pause, to kind of go inward, to listen for those signals and to pay attention to what's happening in their body. And then sometimes they'll look at that wheel and try and find a word that accurately describes what's happening for them. It's a very helpful exercise. So my friend, what are you feeling right now? Yeah, right now. I want you to take a moment to pause and consider with me. What is the emotion you are currently feeling? Do you know? Okay. And can you accurately name it, or is it kind of vague? Do you want to say, I feel fine, I feel okay, or I feel tired? Okay. Those three? No. I'm sorry, no. You need to go get the wheel, Google the wheel, and find something that accurately describes what you're actually feeling. Because those are the go-tos that we will often use when we're not like getting inside our body to listen. Okay. And when we struggle with interoception, it makes total sense that those are our go-tos, right? Just yesterday, got to tell you this funny story. Just yesterday, I was feeling kind of like ass. Like today is my first day back at work after being sick. And I went for the shortest walk in history around the block. It's like maybe 10 minutes. Like I was like intending to go for a decent walk, started to feel terrible, decided I'm just going to come home and lie down instead. And one of our neighbors is pulling out of her driveway. And I was like pretending I did not see her because I was like, I do not want to talk. And she's so lovely. And I was like, I just don't want to talk. And I've really got not much voice. Anyway, she stops in the middle of the road. She reverses into the middle of the road, puts her window down and yells out, "Hey, Zena, how you doing?" You know what I said? I went, "I'm great. How are you?" And in that moment, I knew I am not great. In that moment, I felt awful. Right? I felt like I shouldn't have gone for a walk. I feel so sick. I was feeling so sorry for myself. I felt like I just wanted to lie down, right? Like I was feeling anything but great, but it's just such an automatic response to say that, right? So the question is, how are you feeling really? Right? Now, in hindsight, like to be fair, she was parked in the middle of the road. It didn't matter. Right? She just drove off. It was great. But that's just to demonstrate how instinctively we can kind of respond to that question when it doesn't accurately describe what we're feeling. Did you know there are hundreds, maybe even thousands, but I'm going to go with hundreds of different emotions that we can feel? And throughout our life as a human, we will feel all of them. What? Isn't that wild? And yet we will only use like a handful to describe how we feel most days. So again, I ask you, what are you feeling today? And how do you know that you're feeling that way? All right? What are the signals that you have that identify that emotion for you? So let me give you an example of this. In our last episode, I shared with you, it was the episode 75 about having your own back. And I shared how I had been, had been a mix of emotional, oh my God, what am I trying to say? There had been a mix of emotions. I was trying to say like emotional roller coaster and mix of emotions, and it kind of merged. But anyway, in the lead up to me speaking on stage in front of like about 1,000 people. And so I'm going to go with one of the emotions I had, and that was nerves. So I kept saying, I'm feeling quite anxious. I'm feeling quite anxious today. Like I knew I was going to be anxious on that day, the day I was speaking, right? But when I got really quiet and I went for a walk and kind of tuned in, it was actually nerves. It wasn't anxiety. It was nervousness. Okay. And there is a difference, and I could feel the difference. Okay. So I was feeling nervous, and I knew that because in my body, I had kind of a light swirling sensation, and I had like a tingling that kind of started in my chest and kind of went down my arms. And I was a little bit excited, like it had this kind of, it feels almost like excitement, but I know it's not, but I am a little bit excited at the same time. So there's almost like a little bit of like this kind of confusion in the feeling. And I know for me that is nervous for me, and it borders on excited because I'm doing something I want to do that I know I'm going to be really proud of doing, but I'm leaving my comfort zone. So I'm feeling a bit nervous, like a little bit, so I could feel that in my body. And I also noticed when I was nervous that I was taking shorter breaths, like instinctively I was taking shorter, littler breaths and kind of breathing a little bit more rapidly. That's another thing I noticed that my body was doing internally, right? Those were my internal body signals. So it's a combination of what was happening in my body with my signals and also the thoughts that I noticed in my head. That's how I was able to tell I was feeling nervous in that moment. So I actually really like to do these activities when I'm walking. So I walk morning and night, right? Or morning and late afternoon. And I will often say to myself, what am I feeling? And I often notice such a variation of things in the afternoon. Like in the morning, it's quite similar. But in the afternoon, after I've done a full day of work, or even if I haven't worked that day, what am I feeling? And it takes time for me to practice and like kind of drop into my body. I kind of visualize dropping out of my head and into my body like a pinball machine, right? Oh my God, that's a great visual, right? Like the ball in my head is dropped out of my head into my body and it's like pinging around my body, kind of listening to, checking in with all of the different areas. Like, what are we feeling here? What are we feeling here? What's happening here, right? I love that pinball machine. Genius. Listen to me. I'm on a roll. Oh my gosh. My friends, where was I? So as I was saying, I'll often do this when I'm on a walk, okay? And I'll just drop into the body and listen, like, what's going on? What am I feeling? Am I hungry, tired, thirsty? What's happening, right? And sometimes I'll kind of like, it might help to visualize a scanner running over you, kind of like an X-ray machine, or go back to the pinball because I think that one's genius, right? But even just doing this once a day, like, what am I feeling? Right? This is helping to practice the interoceptive awareness skill, right? This is helping us to become more in tune with our bodies, what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, what they're needing, so that we can take ourselves, right? Catch ourselves in the orange zone and take ourselves back to the green zone before we end up in the red, effectively. Okay? Now, if this is something you struggle with, my friends, and you want to practice it, then I invite you to make it simple and easy to do, right? Don't overcomplicate it. Just set a timer for once a day to do it, to check in, right? You could do the 1-minute body scan and then ask yourself, how am I feeling? Now, if you miss a day, no biggie. Seriously, just pick it up again tomorrow. That's it. Gets to be that simple. All right. And if you would like my help with managing and thriving with ADHD, then I invite you to come over to my website, zenajones.com, book in for a consultation, and let's chat. All right. Huge love, my friend. Happy, what do I want to say? Happy introspective awareness seeking. Oh my gosh, that's a mouthful. Oh dear. All right. Have a beautiful day. Take care. I'll see you soon. If you are loving what you're learning here on the podcast, but you still feel like your ADHD is holding you back, I can help. Using evidence-based coaching tools and my own experiences, I'll help you to manage your emotions and feel better, to increase your productivity, grow your self-confidence, and create the life that you were meant for. Visit zenajones.com/thrive and schedule an ADHD support session to get started.